What is up, Bitcoiners? Good morning. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. So, I have something planned for us today, something that is a little unorthodox for the Build a Mind podcast. Now, I understand we're a Bitcoin mining podcast. I dive into a lot of the heat reuse side of things. I dive into like how mining works and this product or that product in the space. And that's all well and good. I really enjoy those conversations. But I am a Bitcoiner. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm a freedom maximalist through and through. And as you guys know, I love talking about the philosophical side of Bitcoin. I love talking about the interplays between religion and Bitcoin and money and freedom and technology and how all of it plays together to build this world, this ecosystem that we Bitcoiners live and breathe every single day. So while I enjoy those the Bitcoin mining podcasts, I enjoy having those conversations. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. And we'll be back to our regular scheduled programming next week. So if you're not interested in the philosophical side, if you're not interested into the why Bitcoin side of things, then tune out, drop out, tune back in next week. But for those of you who like to have these conversations, we're going to learn a little bit about the Bitcoin philosophy and how it ties into religion and how it ties into technology and finance. And we've got someone to come on the podcast who is very well versed in all of these topics. I mean, maybe not like an expert, but he's definitely done his 10,000 hours. That's for sure. So if you guys are familiar with Satlantis and Svetsky's work with Satlantis, we have somebody on the podcast who is deeply intertwined with Svetsky and the Satlantis project. So Jason Sellars is coming on the podcast today, and I'm super excited about this. Jason's not a Bitcoin miner. He's a Bitcoin educator, teaches people how Bitcoin works, and he has a very interesting background. See, Jason started let me go back. Jason graduated high school in Austin, Texas, and he attended Southern Virginia University. He had no idea what he wanted to do for a career, like many of us, and so he worked many different jobs, from landscaping, customer service, to delivering packages for FedEx. Now, in 2015, he found Bitcoin and used his time as a delivery driver to dive deeper down the rabbit hole by listening to thousands of hours of podcasts and audiobooks. And again, this is where he put his 10,000 hours of work. And I relate to this significantly because before I started doing the podcast, I listened to all the podcasts. I listened to Preston Pish. I listened to Guy Swan. I listened to Marty Bent and, all these people talking about Bitcoin. And I learned so much. So back to Jason. He left FedEx in 2021 for medical reasons. And after learning so much about Bitcoin, he wanted to give back to the community. And so he used his time between jobs to create the Bitcoin only meetup of Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bitcoin Chat. He began working with the team at NOAA as their community manager in 2022. And in 2023, he was asked to be a community manager of the Spirit of Satoshi project. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically an AI built on Bitcoin. Super cool, super interested. Svetsky was working on that project as well. In April 2024, the Spirit of Satoshi was fully open sourced and given to the Bitcoin community, and the team switched gears to build Satlantis, the travel and community social network built on Naster, where Jason is now the ambassador concierge. So, as you can see, Jason has a very diverse history when it comes to Bitcoin. He's been in the space for a while. He understands what he's talking about. And I am super stoked to dive into this conversation. Real quick, before we jump in, I've got a couple things to show you.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right, I made it super easy for you guys. Go to the QR code on the bottom of your screen right now or the link in the description of the show to join the Mastermind Club. The Mastermind Club has been pivotal to my journey into becoming a Bitcoin miner. I know I'm a small miner. I'm not an industrial scale miner, but all the technicalities are the same. So it's very important that you understand so that you can build a profitable business or just a economically viable Bitcoin mining operation. So I implore everybody to check that out. Now, the last thing I want to tell you guys about before we get into this episode with Jason is I will be in Denver for February 21st through the 22nd for the Undermine Heat Punks Summit. Now, this is an perfect opportunity for anybody who's looking to understand how Bitcoin mining meets heat reuse. As Tyler Stevens says, heat is a product, not a problem. So I implore everybody, if you're in Denver or if you're thinking about getting out to Denver, come to the space on February 21st and 22nd. Tickets are like 100,000 sats. It's like $100 right now. It's a great opportunity to come and learn and see what is happening within this space. I will share real quick. I'm going to share the link upon the bottom of the screen so you can see that right there. It's like I said, it's a great opportunity for anybody who's looking to network and grow within the heat reuse side of Bitcoin mining. All right, with that, enough housekeeping. Let's bring on Jason. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And what an intro. I've never been given an intro like that before.
Well, hey, like I said, man, before we started recording, I've been thinking about this episode for like the longest time now. Just so excited to dive in because this is the first conversation that I've had with someone about the actual philosophical side of Bitcoin. And so I want to set the scene for today's episode. And I don't care, like I don't know how much time you have, but you know, I've got a plethora of time. So I want to set the scene with Jason. Through your experience, through your 10,000 hours, what is Bitcoin?
In a nutshell, Bitcoin is the best form of value communication mankind will ever have. And I know that's bold to say will ever have. I don't know the future any better than anybody else. But there are certain, I guess to quote other more philosophical people than I guess lean on first principles, so lean on kind of the, just basic principles, basic fundamentals. Bitcoin's so simple and then programmable, it really can't get any better. It really is the perfect form of value communication. Now, value communication is a longer way of just saying money. It is the best kind of money. And I like to say this, there's also two kinds of communication. There's the communication I'm doing with you right now, with words, spoken word, written word. That's how we communicate information. That's how we communicate data, just what is. But how do we communicate value? How do we communicate importance of something? Now, some things are too important for to us to communicate with value. But in so doing, there's I guess that means you can still kind of communicate it in a way that, like I said about my my son, or I have 5 sons and 1 daughter. But as I said recently about them, all of them, each individually, are worth 22 million Bitcoin. Is what I like to say. That is a sneaky, hidden way of saying they're worth infinite Bitcoin. They're worth more than infinite, all the money in the world. So there's some things like that are priceless, that we can never ever put a Bitcoin or dollar or any other fiat currency price on. And but yeah, so money is how we communicate that importance. And take it back actually to what you said during the intro. You were saying how this is kind of different than build, your typical build a mine podcast. And I appreciate that all that you said there. But I really want to stress the importance that if you are mining, and by the way, actually, I'm just waiting for my miners to arrive. I have a couple of miners from, what's it called again? Heatbit.
Nice.
The Heatbit miners coming. And anyone else who has Heatbit miners knows that they're dealing with a lot of regulations, and it takes a long time for them to arrive. But yeah, I have a couple from there on their way. And as soon as they arrive, then I'll be mining again. I did mine a couple years ago. But back to the main point, it's so vitally important for us to understand what it is we're mining, what and why it's important. Like the old meme that says, there's a guy wearing the tie, and he says, you buy Bitcoin to have more dollars. I buy Bitcoin to have less dollars. We are not the same.
Yeah.
Just switch buy with mine. If you're mining Bitcoin for more of your fiat currency, we're not the same. You don't understand what it is you're mining. And so this philosophical deep dive is so vital to understanding what it is. What is the bigger mission that you're a part of? Everyone, I believe, at least everyone wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what you have the chance to be, whether you're buying and hodling, whether you're mining and then hodling, whatever it is you're doing in this space, you are part of something bigger, something that will change the world, not just for you, not just for your children, not even for just your grandchildren. It will go on perpetually. And I think everyone needs that kind of that kind of vision of the future. And then once you have the vision, go back to mining, go back to maybe your fiat mining job, and just whatever it is that you do. But bear that in mind always about what it is that we're really doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many ways that I could take this, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is this idea that Bitcoin Bitcoin is not just a technology. Bitcoin is not just money. It is a bunch of different things. It is an ecosystem, I like to call it. It is a
Mhm.
global ecosystem, a global network of billions of different actors, independent actors, all working for the same goals. And generally those goals are like personally incentivized or selfish in nature, I guess is what am trying to say. People are only as good as their incentives, but when you can change the incentives around how you generate, store, and project your wealth, time, value, energy, it changes fundamentally who you are and who you want to be. I liken it to my own Bitcoin rabbit hole story. Is I will be completely honest with all of my audience. Is like I have had some dark times. When I was a young kid, I went through a lot of mental turmoil that most kids shouldn't have to deal with. And then as I came out of my early adolescence into my young adult years, I had this heavy burden of becoming a man and trying to, figure out how to navigate this world. On top of the fact that I'm living in one of the most inflationary times in human history, the dollar's fine, like in the States for most people. But if you look outside of the United States, if you look at places like Argentina, places like, Gaza and all these other nations that are running off of, dollar equivalents, their money's being debased, 100 times in a day. Sometimes in one night they wake up and their money's been debased by 100%. This is slowly happening to the United States, and a lot of people, myself included, have felt this pain of watching the money that you spend your time and energy, which your time and energy is more scarce than Bitcoin. You
Mhm.
trade that for dollars, and you go to buy something, you go to save up for something, and by the time you get there, you realize that the goalpost has been completely moved because the money that you're saving in is being debased by people that do not have your best interests at heart. And I think that for me, fundamentally, that is why Bitcoin matters. Bitcoin matters because for the first time, I mean, yes, we had a gold standard, but the first time in human evolution, we have something that no centralized party can debase or inflate away through money printing. And so when you can store your time, your energy in something like that, all of a sudden it has huge implications for your own life and for the power that you can project into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking there when you said that of an analogy I actually haven't told anyone in a long time. Uh, if you're trying to be a good person, just trying to be just a decent human being in the fiat system, it's kind of like trying to walk uphill with the wind blowing at you in your face. Everything is against you. Every force, every incentive, everything. You have to go against your own incentives somehow. Um, maybe your incentive, maybe you have a more spiritual incentive. You're trying to be a good person so that for some kind of heavenly reward distantly in the future, and maybe that's your incentive. That's kind of the incentive I grew up with, and that means living a pretty sucky life now, and sometimes it's worth it. If having low time preference, go through the pain now for rewards later. But on a sound money standard, on the soundest money, Bitcoin, it flips that. It completely inverses it. So if you want to be a good person, if you want to be honest, if you want to have integrity, if you want to be loving, anything like that, then it's like walking downhill with the wind at your back, pushing you along. Every incentive is encouraging you to do this. I love the example. I want to say this was in the Bitcoin Standard or another book. They all blend together in my head. But of the wine merchant on a Fiat standard. As Fiat keeps getting debased more and more, they have a choice: either raise prices on their wine, or water down their wine. Basically, shrinkflation, do shrinkflation on their wine. Now, if they choose to raise prices, meanwhile, every other wine merchant, there you go, miners podcast. That's why. Anyway, everyone else though is lowering their prices, or everyone else decides to water down their wine and stay at the same price. But you raise your price, keeping your wine the same quality. Likely, you're going to lose customers who won't notice the difference at first because it's so subtle. So while everyone else is lying and you're telling the truth, you get punished for living a life of integrity and telling your customers, hey, look, the price of the grapes went up. I had to raise, and the price of the glass for the bottles and everything else, it all went up. So I have to raise prices. I'm really sorry. Meanwhile, everyone else is just lying, saying, no, there's no change. In fact, we're giving you a discount because you're such a great customer and things like that. But and so it incentivizes this system of lying and cheating and stealing and all other kinds of evil, really. For lack of a better term, I know it's kind of an abstract term, but still. But a Bitcoin system, this ultimate hard money system, is something that inflates. Something that encourages and incentivizes honesty and integrity, because the money is getting harder. The way that we are expressing our value to each other is just getting better with time, not worse. And so the exact opposite happens with that. Prices go down, and like on things like, and as long as you are personally responsible, being responsible for like the money that you have and the resources that you have, then everything else plays out just fine. So it becomes easier with time to lower prices and raise the quality. So it's not shrinkflation; it'll be like growflation. I don't know, but yeah, basically deflation is what it's called. Let's see, deflation is such an amazing, wonderful thing that. Which actually is that. Yep, I see the book, The Price of Tomorrow, on your bookshelf back there. Yes, yeah. As that book talks about. So important to have deflation. But deflation does not work when people are irresponsible, when people are spending willy-nilly and never saving and stuff, and going into huge amounts of debt that they don't need to go into. Yeah, introduce deflation to that. If we suddenly did that overnight, it would feel like the biggest rug pull ever on everyone using fiat. Everyone would suddenly be underwater in a heartbeat like that, except for the people who have been responsible. The vast majority of responsible and saving, and the vast majority of them are people who are into Bitcoin and things like that. Even things similar to it, like maybe gold, they would still be pretty good. Because my contention is that gold's pretty good money. Bitcoin's the best.
Yeah.
And I guess gold isn't really money, but it's a pretty good store of value. It works okay.
Yeah,
and
it's not a great medium of exchange, but it is an okay store of value through time. Everybody wants that shiny rock. You know, you talk about something, and it reminds me of that phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats, you know, and fiat is, it's kind of weird because it is a rising tide. It's not lifting all the boats. It's almost like the people who have access to these things that people store their value in, store of value. A lot of times it's real estate, the stock market, certain commodities like oil and even gold. Those are raised to the top. Those are the people who, hold all the majority of the wealth that we're seeing right now. But the people who save in dollars because they don't understand. I mean, look, we'll just take it back. In the normal fiat education system, they don't teach you about money, and that's for good reason. They don't want you to understand that the way out is not to save in their money. You have to save in other assets. Now, most rich people know this. They understand how to put their money into better performing things. So be it, like whether it's real estate, whether it's gold. I mean, it's mainly real estate, and that's part of why it's so hard to find a house and find property for us millennials and even the newer generations. But that's besides what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is this idea that when you have money that is serving the people at the top and not the people at the bottom, goes back to these incentives. You're not incentivized to save in that money. And most of the time, people, regular everyday people, they just go from, okay, well, I can't save in this money, so I won't save at all. And when my grandmother, she was a very hard worker, and when she was growing up, when she was my age, she could store all of her money, dollars, into her glove box of her car and save it until she had enough money to put a down payment on a house. And that down payment was like 35% of a house. And she had like, I want to say she had like $5,000. She spent $30,000 on a home, and it was like a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a garage, and it was a beautiful home. Today, that will not work for us because our money has been completely destroyed through inflation. And my grandmother never understood that, so what I was taught was to store in dollars, save your time and energy in dollars, and you will be rewarded. We live in different times. So today, and this is where I think most Bitcoiners kind of come to the realization of, is like, hey, if I can't store my time and my energy in dollars, what can I store my time and my energy in? And then once they make that switch to saving in Bitcoin, because you have to have that saving mentality. First off, you have to have that, like, I want to save for the future. So what am I going to save in? Obviously, there are answers like gold. There are answers like real estate, stocks, and bonds. But the best answer is obviously Bitcoin, because it grows in value, your purchasing power increases, all that good stuff. So to bring this all together, is the best form of savings is Bitcoin, but you have to have a certain mindset in order to get to, I want to save in Bitcoin. And then it just becomes this revolving, perpetual, virtuous cycle of learning why it's better money, saving more money, becoming wealthier, and having more time to project that power forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure. Do you want me to comment on that?
I'm just
sorry.
trying to. No, it's good. We can basically. I'm trying to just continue this conversation of why Bitcoin is the best form of money. You started this off by talking about that. I kind of wanted to set the scene there.
Okay, well, yeah, actually, and something you said earlier that I was thinking about was the need to invest. What we've both grown up in, like the world we both grew up in. Like you said, it's not your grandma's world anymore, and you have to invest in something just to survive, and that it should never be that way. It should be you earn money, you spend less than you earn, and you profit, and that's it. It's just so simple. So imagine like a world where you don't have to invest in something, but you can if you so choose. So like, what if a friend of mine, something I tell my kids sometimes about is, if I had a friend who invented something and wanted to create a business around this invention and sell it, let's say that it had to be something, in my opinion, it had to be something that I think is going to grow in greater value in the short term, like the next several years, next 5 years or so. They'll do better than the growth of basically everything in the world combined. Once the whole world's on a Bitcoin standard, obviously. for me to then throw some Bitcoin at it and say, hey, I'm going to invest in this because I believe I'm going to get more back. For that, it would have to be something like a teleportation or something along those lines. If someone invented a teleporter, let's say it's a little thing that we wear it like a watch, and you just tell it exactly where you want to go, and anywhere in the whole universe, you're there. I want to put a spacesuit on for some things, but it takes you there. So anywhere in the whole world, at least. Something like that, yeah, I would totally want to invest in, but only because I want to, because I believe in that product and I believe it would do something good for the world. Let's say there's something else that that isn't quite so sci-fi, but some other business idea that I'm just like mind blown. Oh, that's such a great idea. The world needs that so badly. Yeah, I would want to invest in that. But we don't live in that kind of world today. We live in a world where people are just scrounging around to try to desperately find something to invest in, hoping that that number will go up or that number will go up because it's a necessity for survival, rather than just than just saving. Someone I was just thinking about recently, actually, about what saving really is at its core. It's doing work that benefits somebody else. Maybe you built a house. Maybe you dug a trench where there's some piping there. You did some work that is benefiting humanity. Well, you just got paid for that. So now everything is equal. You just got compensated for the work you did. You could then cash out essentially of that that compensation by buying some food or buying a ticket to the movies or going to a fair, a county fair, something like that. You could buy yourself a gift for a late Christmas gift or something like that. Or you could save it. Now, saving means, okay, I'm not going to cash out on this. I'm not going to take any value that someone else has created. I am just going to give value. I just gave value, and now I'm going to hold. I'm just going to wait. Which is a gift, to quote Satoshi Nakamoto, it's like a donation to everyone. It may be temporary because you're saving it. You'll spend that later. But for all those out there who say that saving and hodling is is just hoarding and you're not benefiting the world at all. Like, excuse me, you just benefited the world and asked for nothing in return, or at least say, I'll take nothing in return for now. I'll get back with you in a decade, and then I'll get something in return. And so these people, like anybody saving, anyone hodling, should be thanked profusely, not belittled and chastised for hoarding. And so I know I went on a bit of a tangent there about that, but just want to take you back to what we were saying there about investing, and that this is that Bitcoin simplifies life in so many ways. I like to say that Bitcoin is money, but it's money that makes it so you don't have to worry about money. You don't have to think about money anymore. Just live a very simple life. It's like the meme. It's a peaceful life. Or I think it was the whole meme I saw once. It was like, so what? You just stack sats and hodl? Like, that's all you do with your life? And it's like, yeah, it's a peaceful life. And yes, it really is a peaceful life. I think we all of us have enough on our plates. We don't also need to be, budgeting and worrying, or are we going to be able to pay for groceries this month? No, just stack sats and hodl and leave it. Leave it knowing you don't have to trust anyone else. Write down 12 words, stamp it out on seed plate or something like that. Store that away somewhere secret. Maybe make sure your closest, most trusted loved ones, like my wife or something, for me, knows where that is, just in case something terrible happens. And then live your life. Go enjoy. Go get some sunlight. Go get some fresh air. Go work and benefit other people, and get lots of joy. Just gain joy by making the world a better place.
Well, it's very interesting that you brought that up in the way that you brought it up, because Guy Swan talks about a lot of these themes quite often on his podcast. And if you're saving and you're spending your time and energy in the marketplace, and then you're not asking for anything in return right now, like you said, it's a donation to society and to the future of society. Now, one thing that I think of all the time is, you think about how people show up in this world, whether they show up for themselves or they show up for their families. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering, and there's a lot of people that aren't showing up in the right ways. Now, is that because they are not incentivized to do so, or is it because they have no ability to show up that way? And I think that Bitcoin, all of those things that you just said, to play on it, is like Bitcoin gives you the ability to not have to worry about whether or not you can pay your bills, whether or not, the groceries are going to come. Bitcoin gives you the ability to not have to work a third job to figure out where you're going to put your money, because that's the thing, is that like people are working two jobs just to earn the money, and then they have a third job to figure out where they're going to put the money. And Bitcoin allows you to get rid of that third job, and maybe even the second one as well, and just focus on work, and then come home and show up and be home. Me personally, I'm a father, you're a father, and so I think that you would agree is that family is one of the most important thing. But if you're constantly worrying about whether or not you can put food on the table, whether or not there's going to be a roof over your family's head, like, you don't get to show up as a father and raise your family the way that you want to. And this is something that we're seeing surfacing in the world today. You have hundreds of millions of people who are growing up with broken families, broken homes, because the money that they are working for is actively working against them.
Yeah, absolutely. Family, a lot of people say, family is like the building block of society. It is the smallest unit of society, I could argue, is the individual. But after that is the family, and especially when we're growing up, the ideal situation is for children to grow up with both parents in the home, a mother and a father. Though people are claiming and experimenting, you could do all other kinds of mixtures of families, and people have done that for thousands of years. I mean, thousands of years, and none of them work at all. They're like socialism. It's like they keep on trying it over and over and over again. Oh, this time will be different. No, it won't. It really won't. I mean, I don't know whether you want to come at it from more of a religious perspective, but like, look, God ordained this, like that, or if you want to come from more of an evolutionary perspective, that look, this is not just for like 6,000 years, like most Christians would believe. No, we're talking millions, no, billions of years that life has just worked this way, with the yin and yang of male and female and stuff, and trying to rebuild it. I mean, it's not tantamount to it. It really is playing God, trying to say, no, I'm going to make my own rules for the universe. Like, what are you going to do next? Make rules for gravity and math? And there's a fun book that some of you may remember, where they try to claim that 2 + 2 = 5, 1984, and it's like it's the same mentality. These people who believe that they are somehow above all that, and that they know better than, again, whether you want to say better than billions of years of evolution, or eternity of God. No matter what your perspective is, people are saying that they know better. Anyway, though, going back to the family aspect, though, yeah, like you said, Bitcoin allows families to then be cohesive. To I guess, yeah, I was thinking building blocks earlier, like bricks. There's some if a brick is brittle, if it just falls apart and crumble, it's not a brick, it's just a clump of mud. And yeah, and I guess, yeah, bricks can, if they're really strong, then you can build a whole building out of it. So families, if they're really strong, you build a whole society out of it. You build civilization, and with civilization comes progress, and just things overall getting better, more joyful, people having more access to the things that they really, really want deep down, and everyone just gets happier. That rising tide just lifts all boats, as you said. Yeah.
Well, we're all seeking very similar things. We're all trying to live a life that matters, that means something. We're all seeking purpose. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin is your purpose. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say is that Bitcoin gives you the ability to find your purpose.
Yes.
And purpose is what we're lacking in this world. I love that you brought this idea of yin and yang in. whether you want to call it God, and the words, that this is the huge problem with words, and Robert
Mhm.
Breedlove talks about this all the time, is that words mean different things for different people. Okay. To me, God is not some man in the sky with a beard. God is, to me, and the audience may not feel the same, but to me, God is the energy that lives in all things, as all things, of all things. So when they say God is everything, it's like literally God is the energy flowing, it's the lifeblood of everything. You talk about yin
Mhm.
and yang. There's a reason why it takes a mother and a father to raise a family, a nuclear family, a family that is not dealing with the burden of trauma and existential crises. It's because there is the father dynamic, which is this very masculine energy that brings in certain traits, and there is the feminine energy, this motherly nurturing instinct that builds and creates. So
Mhm.
it takes both of these things in order to raise a child who is ready for the world, for lack of a better phrase. And I'm not trying to demean or degrade anyone who's living outside of those fundamental norms. I'm not saying that, a man can't embody the feminine. I'm not saying that a woman can't embody the masculine. Um, what I'm saying is that it takes the feminine who is in touch with her masculinity, the yin and yang, it's black with a white dot and white with a black dot.
Yes.
It's a female or a feminine energy that is in touch with the masculine, and a masculine energy that is in touch with the feminine. And that is what creates that nuclear family,
Mhm.
which through time and, tying in Bitcoin, when you have the ability to not stress about like where money is and how you're going to pay bills through time, this dynamic raises better human beings, and those
Mhm.
human beings then have the ability to create a better society.
Yeah. I mean, better human beings are raised in that way because they have both that feminine and masculine strengths, I guess, raising them, helping them up. Now, I do want to add a caveat. I know there are single parent families. I'm actually good friends with a guy who's a single father. My heart goes out to all of them. I cannot imagine that. What that life must be. They have to act as both yin and yang in their family, and sometimes, despite their best efforts, their children still will grow up in ways that kind of show they're missing that yin or they're missing that yang, and then the child has to work past that. I mean, even though I had both parents in my household growing up, my dad was often not there for me,
Mhm.
and I've had to work through a lot of the pain and I'd say trauma with a small t. I don't want to diminish other people's trauma and stuff, but still, I guess it would kind of be in that category. And and so yeah, we all have different things we need to work through, but yeah, you have a better chance, generally speaking, of raising better children and creating a better future for everyone if if both parents are there in the home. And like you were saying, Bitcoin allows for that. So the mother can stay home with the children; she doesn't have to work a job. The father could just work one job. Then he could start working a job that is more in line with his beliefs, with his values. He can work something that he believes in. Something I'm looking forward to, actually. Well, so first of all, okay, actually rewind to before I was a FedEx delivery driver. I was at one point working 4 part-time jobs and barely scraping by, taking care of my family. Um, that was absolutely horrible. And Yeah, so my heart goes out to everyone who's out there doing that right now. But then, through a lot of hands of providence, you could say, um, I got the job at FedEx and was able to just focus in and just do that as one job. Not the job I wanted, not my ideal career long term, but it was a job and it put food on the table. And I was able to stack Sats too, and stack a lot of knowledge about Bitcoin as well. So it was a great job, but just a job. Then as time went on, and like you explained before, I was between jobs for a little while. I also had enough saved up where I was able to spend several months between jobs, setting up Bitcoin chat, the Chattanooga meetup here, the Bitcoin meetup here in Chattanooga, I mean, and then look for work, and then I was able to find work that was a lot closer to my my beliefs or my I guess my ikigai, which maybe I should go into a little bit of that. So for anyone who's not familiar with the Japanese term ikigai, Ikigai, it basically means your purpose in life, your mission. It's bigger than your passion. It's like the reason that you exist.
Your purpose.
And yeah, your purpose. Yeah. A lot of people like to say it's like a four-way combination. And by the way, this isn't technically accurate. It's like the actually meme. And so don't want anyone to come into the comments with, well, actually, and I was like, no, I know. But a lot of people like to say it's like this four-way combination of what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what the world is willing to pay you for. And for a long time, I struggled to find something. I would find like 2 out of the 3, or 2 out of the 4, or 3 out of the 4, but not all 4. Until I was like, I want to educate people about Bitcoin, and I want to do anything in the Bitcoin space that can take care of that, what the world is willing to pay me for, quadrant. And so then that's when I was able to get a job at NOAA. And then I won't go into details, but NOAA started doing some things. NOAA, by the way, is a wallet that is mainly catering to people in developing countries. It is custodial. At least last I checked, last I worked with them, was a custodial on-chain and Lightning wallet. But they started doing a few things that I didn't agree with as a Bitcoin maximalist. Just morally, I felt uncomfortable with it. Nothing that I was going to, just up and quit and be unemployed again for, but still. So then when I was offered a job at the Spirit of Satoshi, this was a step closer to what I wanted. So my point is, I'm like going on this ladder kind of, rather than going up a corporate ladder, trying to get closer and closer to a CEO or something. Good grief, I don't want to be a CEO ever. But I see how much Svetsky has to do with that. I'm like, I would never want that. But the main point is I'm getting closer and closer to my ikigai. I know what it is. I'm reaching for it. I'm not there yet. And eventually, when I have enough Bitcoin stacked, I mean, does that really ever happen? But still, when I guess enough for like to live on for the rest of my life, when my kids have moved out and they're providing value for themselves and their family and for the world around them and stuff, where I don't have to work a job. Something my wife has talked about a lot is that she really doesn't want us to become sedentary, like just sitting around watching TV all the time. A lot of older people do that. They retire and then they relax and get sucked into this black hole of motionlessness, and not providing any value. They're just taking all the value that they built up over time. Which, I mean, fine. It's not really fine, but it's like, I guess they can do that. That's their right, but still, like, seriously, you can do better than that. So what I plan to do is the point I was trying to get to here with all this. What I plan to do is get to the point where I am creating value for other people and not even asking for payment, where I'm just like, I want to, help people who are in need, who are less fortunate. And I don't, maybe giving to the poor, building things for them or stuff like that. I don't know what it will be yet, but I'll be so free because of Bitcoin. I'll be so free that I can give. I can give of my time, give of my talents and my abilities and my knowledge, and just say, this is freely given. Just take it and use it, and use my retirement years for that. And Bitcoin allows me to do that. And for me, that's like the ultimate lifestyle, really, of whether you're going to call it retirement or whatever. That is the ultimate way of living, of giving. And sure, if people want to give back to me to compensate me back, I'm not going to protest against that. But living a giving lifestyle is something I really look forward to. Obviously, we all can't. I can't right now. I'm not in that position. But if we hodl for long enough, then it'll absolutely be that kind of way. And then what's my compensation? The pure joy I get from lifting up other people and lifting the burdens off their backs.
An interesting thought experiment is to think about what the world would look like with millions of people doing just that. They spent their working years developing their skill set, developing their passions and their purpose, and they were able to store enough away to where they can live comfortably for the rest of their existence. And that period where they're no longer being compensated in a monetary way from what they're providing to society, they can spend that time freely choosing how and where they show up in the world. I know that it would look very different for very different people, but what does the world look like? And I'm not asking you this question, but what does the world look like when millions of individual actors are making that same decision? It's an interesting thought experiment. I always say that, to me, Bitcoin is hope. Bitcoin is hope for a better future, for a better world tomorrow than we have today. And some people might disagree with me and say that Bitcoin is freedom, or Bitcoin is, the ability to project your power forward. Bitcoin is value, all these different things. But to me, fundamentally, Bitcoin is the hope that my family will not have to work as hard next year as we did last year. And I hope that when my son grows up and becomes a man, he will not have to work as hard as I did. Not saying that he shouldn't work hard, because I believe everyone should work hard. Everyone should find something that they're truly passionate about, should find their ikigai, and they should pursue that to the absolute fullest extent of their power. Now, that looks different for everyone. Everybody, that's the greatest thing about being individuals, is we all have an individual idea of what our purpose is. And coming back to Bitcoin, is for the first time in human history, we have the ability to store our value in something that can't be taken from us if we take the responsibility and store it properly, that is. And we can then think about how we want to show up as human beings. Now, I want to take this back a little bit, because you brought up the idea of God. And, I'm not talking about God as a guy in the sky with the beard. Like I said, God is the energy that runs through all things, in things, as things. What would you say to somebody who said that Bitcoin is the immaculate conception of money, divine intervention, God imbued? What would you say to that?
Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna give away a bit of my history here. Which when you and I spoke before, I think I talked to you about this, but I'm not sure. But either way, I talked about this some on Nostr and Twitter. But my religious history, my religious background is I grew up Mormon. And actually, if you had asked me 5 years ago, let's say, if like what religion, I would just say, yeah, I'm Mormon. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the full title. It's a mouthful. But and then for the last 4 years or so, I went through not last 4 years, sorry. Then from the stuff in 2020, let's just say, kicked off some questions in my mind that I wrestled with for a while. And then it was about a year ago, shortly after the birth of my 6th child, I got some time, not off of work, but where I worked part-time for a little while, and that gave me some more time to dive in and study some more things about my church's, my then church's doctrine and history. Which took me down a path that and I was talking with God about it the whole time, getting His perspective on it, and it brought me to a place where I am today, where I don't consider myself Mormon anymore. But this is where it gets kind of unique. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. So I believe what you were saying about God. But so I agree with that. But I also believe that there is a man, like a tangible man, who has prints in his hands and feet. So yeah, I believe that both are they're not mutually exclusive. You can have kind of the energy and essence as well as the physical manifestation. So I also believe in the Bible, as all Mormons do. For anyone watching this who think Mormons aren't Christian, I'm formerly Mormon, and I will defend that they are Christian. They're a little weird, and let's not go into the weirdness. There are some weird differences, and I will absolutely agree with anyone about that. But oh yeah, so Mormons believe in the Bible and the Book of Mormon, which I still believe in. I still believe in the Book of Mormon. So having said that, there's a couple different parts in the Book of Mormon that say, there's one part in nearest to the beginning, a book called Second Nephi, where this guy Nephi, this like 600-ish years before Christ was born, he had left Jerusalem. This is just before the Babylonian captivity, and he's writing this in a book for his descendants, and he tells them, and by extension us, the reader, that all things given of God unto man is the typifying of Christ, is like a shadow or an echo of Christ. Basically, anything that if you wonder if something is of God or not, look for the ways that it exemplifies Christ in some way. Another thing, much later. This is the guy at the very end of the Book of Mormon, he's writing this, he's putting this together, but he's quoting his father, whose actual name was Mormon, the guy who put the book together, hence the name. But where Mormon is saying that all things that are good comes from God. So, and the way to know if something is good is I will basically run through a couple of checklists. Like, does it bring you closer to God? Does it help you to be a better person? Does it encourage you to be a better person? If so, if all those things are checked off, then yeah, it is. You can know with a surety that it is from God. And Bitcoin, it fits the bill so well. It is absolutely of God. I'm not going to make a claim, not a serious one at least, that Satoshi Nakamoto was God or was an angel or something like that. My personal serious belief, so let's just keep this real here. My personal belief is that Satoshi was Len Sassaman. For anyone who doesn't know, he was I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name right, Sassaman. Anyway, for any of you who don't know, he was on the mailing list, Cypherbook mailing list. Good, upstanding, decent guy, and very smart. But he struggled a lot with a lot of mental and emotional challenges, and self-esteem issues about himself. Things I can definitely relate to. And unfortunately, in mid 2011, I think, like summer 2011, he took his own life. It's very, very sad. There's actually a tribute to him. I forget exactly what block this is, but there's a tribute to him embedded in one of the blocks on Bitcoin. So and it'll be there forever in Bitcoin's ledger, where they did like the whole like ASCII picture thing of him. And it's anyone listening to this, I encourage you to look him up and look that up. But and if it wasn't him, it maybe was someone who wasn't. They never used their real name on there, and it's someone entirely different. My personal belief is that Satoshi Nakamoto, this is my main point here, was a mortal man, or possibly woman, or group, but mortal, finite, fallible. Not that they're God or angel. However, if I die and find out, if God then tells me, "Hey, that was me. I did some stuff to cause these words to be written on the screen." Okay, I'll accept that. But yeah, my personal belief is that it was a good person. The Satoshi Nakamoto was a good person who was at very minimum inspired by God. They wouldn't have been able to create something like Bitcoin without inspiration from something. Again, if you out there don't believe in God, just something higher, something greater than ourselves. This Bitcoin thing could not, in my opinion, could not have come from something at the same level as us, for lack of a better way of explaining it. It has to have come from something greater.
Well, I mean, you think about a musician, Jimi Hendrix, or Bob Dylan, these greats of their time, these people who created incredible pieces of art. You think, where did that inspiration for that art come from? And a lot of them would tell you, I don't know. It just popped into my head, and I had a unique skill set that allowed me to bring that to fruition. And I'm blanking on the names of these great deep thinkers who think about these kinds of concepts. But where do ideas truly come from? Are the
Mhm.
thoughts inside of our heads just coming out of the ether, or are they a projection of our own mind? There's a lot to be said here, and a lot to be thought about here. But
Mhm.
no, Satoshi Nakamoto was not a god. He is not I don't believe Satoshi Nakamoto was God incarnate.
Mhm.
Now, I highly believe that Satoshi Nakamoto was influenced by the divine, just like
Yeah.
most beautiful art is. Now here's the thing about Bitcoin. If Bitcoin had been 5 years earlier, or 5 years after, would Bitcoin be what it is today? I don't think so. There
I
were
completely agree.
there were certain stepping stones, certain things that had to happen before Bitcoin could come into fruition. And then certain events had to take place after that in order for Bitcoin to become what it is today. Now, all of that being said, Bitcoin is not perfect. Bitcoin is not
Mhm.
infallible. There are attack vectors. There are ways to quote unquote control, not control, co-opt Bitcoin. So
Mhm.
we have to constantly stay vigilant. But my whole rambling theory here is that yes, Bitcoin was divine inspired. Bitcoin was inspired by, for lack of a better word, God. And
Mhm.
that is why it plays into so many different aspects of our reality, and why it makes things better. This whole conversation is basically whittled down to the fact that Bitcoin makes us better human beings so that we can show up better and be better in the world, and create a better world to live in, to be better in. And so at the end of the day, it's just Bitcoin, whether or not you believe it, audience, whether or not you agree with me, like, that's besides the point. Bitcoin was divinely inspired to make a better world for us all to live in.
Yeah, I do want to add that Bitcoin does not automatically do this. There are a lot of people who, despite being incentivized to lower their time preference, to wait, meaning like defer gratification, to be more responsible. There are a lot of people who won't, who the siren call of crypto, or of well, I don't know, even candy or something simple like that. That's not good for you, and those sats would really be better spent elsewhere. But not gonna. I mean, if crypto's way worse, of course, but still, um, I think we all do this to some extent. But like we give into some of those siren calls, but some people will continue to choose that. They'll continue to feel addicted, or that high time preference kind of incentives,
Temptation.
yeah, and temptations will be too much for them, will be too strong. Um, and so it really is still on us. This does not replace our own vigilance, our own responsibility. But if you are not vigilant, if you are not responsible, then there's no one to hold your hand. There's no one to cushion the consequences from smacking you directly in the face.
Mhm.
And some people will then learn from those things. A lot of people already have. They traded cryptos and stuff. They sold their Bitcoin for 20,000, thought they were a genius, and now they look at the price like, and so, but where was it going with? Oh yeah, yeah. And so there are some people who simply people like to say online, you're not going to make it and stuff. There's some people who, despite Bitcoin, they may even own Bitcoin and nothing else, and they're still not going to make it because they haven't done the work, the internal work, to really change their lives, to live a life that is more in line with the standards and the ethos of Bitcoin. And so that's still on us. That is not gone away at all. What Bitcoin does, though, is it makes it so that the pain can be more acutely felt when we do something that is against the ethos of Bitcoin, just against reality, against the flow of how reality works, how God works, if you want to come at it from that direction.
I completely agree.
And yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got to say right now about
Yeah.
that.
So something that did you see Svetsky's interview with Natalie Brunell on Coin Stories?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So for anybody in the audience that hasn't listened to it, go back and listen to it, because the context really matters in this point of the conversation. You said something that, Bitcoin can do all these things for you, but it does not inherently mean it will happen. People will be smacked in the face, people will learn these lessons, or they will not. Now, Svetsky had mentioned on Natalie Brunell's podcast that Bitcoin doesn't make you a better person. Bitcoin doesn't influence you to be a better person. I would argue with that a little bit. It does influence you to be a better person, but it only augments what's already inside of you. And this is where he was going with this point, is that if you are the type of person that wants to show up for yourself, for other people over yourself, you want to be a better human being, Bitcoin is going to augment those qualities that are inherently living within yourself. If you are, for lack of a better word, if you are a evil person, with darkness inside of your soul, then yeah, Bitcoin, you can use Bitcoin too. I mean, you can use a gun to protect yourself, or you can use a gun to protect other people. That doesn't make the gun inherently good or bad. The same thing with Bitcoin. It doesn't make Bitcoin inherently good or bad, but it can be used for both. And so really, the siren calls, the temptations, these things that drive us to be a good person or a bad person, are augmented by what Bitcoin enables. And I like what you said about how people will learn, like you go through the shitcoin journey, and you are tempted by all of these riches and all of this fame and all of this stuff, and then you get smacked in the face, and either you can get up and you can try all of that again, and you can get smacked in the face again, or you can go, man, that really hurt. I did not like the way I felt. Let me try something else. And this is what Bitcoin does. This is what Bitcoin allows. Bitcoin, while I believe it is divine inspired, God never said, like in the Bible, to go back to this, God never said, you must follow me. You must do what I say. You must do all these things. No, he said, you have the choice. You can make a choice to follow me. You can make a choice to live your life, after the way that I live mine. That is your choice. Now, the consequences for doing one or the other are set in stone. Like, you're going to deal with these consequences either way, but you have the choice. And Bitcoin, in my opinion, that's what Bitcoin is. You have the choice to use a better form of money that can augment your life and make you a better human being, or you have the choice to continue using fiat or living in a fiat mindset and destroying the value that you are as a human being.
Yeah, and I think that back to the very, very beginning of this conversation, you asked me what Bitcoin is. I think this is what Bitcoin fundamentally is. Well, first, what fiat is, as I'll talk about, is fiat is an attempt by man among those. It's the most recent attempt by man. Mankind throughout all history is a series of people trying to escape consequences, of people trying to create their own reality. They think that their rules are better, like their fundamental rules of reality, and and so they keep on trying to soften those consequences, defer those consequences to later in their life, maybe even after their life, and so their descendants can take care of that. But Bitcoin is it moves the consequences to as close to now as possible. And so it's being embraced by people. And generally, of course, there's still a lot of people who think that they're only in it for the number go up. They're early, but the people who are deeply in it, they've embraced Bitcoin because they are fully and wholeheartedly agreeing to take consequences now, good and bad. And it is trying remember now what I was going to say about that. Basically, yeah, rather than have something cushioned, they're just saying reality with a capital R, reality, God, do your stuff, and I will be the humble recipient of whatever happens to me. And I remember now where I was going with this. So, in my opinion, yes, Bitcoin won't change everyone. Some people will stay prideful, they will stay stubborn, and just hold on to their the image I'm getting in my head is like someone holding on to a part of a building or something, a crumbling wall, as the building is just crumbling around, just falling apart around them. While we might be screaming at them to get out and get away from this, it's still, everything's just falling apart around them, and they won't let go. And so that's why I believe that the ultimate not consequence, but the ultimate future, what's the word I'm trying to look for here? Result, I guess. Ultimate result for Bitcoiners and people who, whether people are in Bitcoin or not, is either prosperity and joy on one hand, and freedom, and greater, and with freedom. I said this recently. I say this to a lot of people, that freedom is a byproduct of responsibility. So just want to throw that caveat in there. So that on one side, and poverty, starvation, and even death on the other side. And so it's this natural selection type of thing where one side, the side that decides, that they choose individually. No one and nothing is pushing them, is forcing them to be more responsible. They have chosen through pain, through seeing the wisdom of things, through a lot of different methods, to choose the better path. And everybody else is not. They're choosing their way, their pride. Oh, there's a line from a book called The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis, where the main character, supposed to kind of be C.S. Lewis, is talking with George MacDonald, a Christian man from like a century ago, who, the fictitious George MacDonald, he says, in the end, there are only two kinds of people: those to whom God says, thy will be done. So those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, thy will be done. Like, sure, you can have what you want, your little tiny rock in the middle of an ocean. That can be your land, and you can feel so great about how much you own. But that's all you get. Or everybody else who gets everything that I have, is kind of what God's saying. And so that's really what it boils down to. And each and every one of us has that opportunity. Sorry, my hair keeps getting on my forehead there. But everyone has the opportunity to choose one or the other. And that's always been the case. That's always been just the fact of reality. Bitcoin just makes that clearer. It demystifies that for everyone. And so I believe it is either the greatest sifter and possibly the ultimate sifter, the ultimate separating the wheat from the chaff, as Jesus would tell in that parable. It's at least the best one we've ever seen, and possibly the greatest, because it is money. It is this method of communicating value that and people can keep on messing up, and when they do, messing up with it, when they do, they reap the consequences directly. And then everybody else who learns from those consequences, or learns from those bad consequences from others, will only benefit. And by benefit, I mean, greater prosperity financially, but also they become a better person. They start doing better things in the world. They become more of that wheat, the kind of people who also, as Jesus said, will feed his sheep, rather than the people who just the providers versus the leeches, the parasites, providers and parasites, which actually takes me back to a point you were making a while ago, or that we were talking about a while ago, when I was talking about what I would want to do in my retirement years once I don't need to work every day. I will still want to work every day, but I'll want to do that so I can benefit more people's lives, even if I don't get paid anything for it. In Alex Svetsky's book, a recent book that just came out, The Bushido of Bitcoin, he makes a great point about a future of kings and queens, a feudal system type of future. That I'm still reading the book for the second time, so I wouldn't be
I
able
haven't
to
even gotten mine yet.
Oh, seriously, it
Yeah.
is fantastic. I will say there's some stuff in it that a lot of Bitcoiners, especially coming from more of a libertarian background, may take issue with. My one advice to everyone reading that book, The Bushido of Bitcoin, is to hear Svetsky out. Don't
Yeah.
disagree and then just toss the book in the fire or something. No. Keep reading and hear him out all the way and then make your decision.
Mhm.
But what he talks about in there, he defines early on the word elite. That we refer to people who are in the World Economic Forum and people high up in government and people at the Federal Reserve. We oftentimes refer to them as elites, which is a really, really terrible word for them. They are the farthest thing from elite. They are parasites. They should be referred to as the parasitic class. But what I was describing there and what you were describing earlier about what if millions of people were just out there serving? They had plenty of money for themselves and their children, and more than enough for a rainy day kind of type thing. But they're out there serving because they want to, because they find joy in it. This is the ikigai, and maybe they're getting paid a little bit, just have a little bit coming in. But those people are the elites. They are the true elites, the people who are strong of mind, strong of body, strong of character. They are connected with God, whether they know it or not. Maybe they are, like you were talking about earlier, an artist, that they're just getting inspired with ideas. And maybe they don't even believe that God exists, but they're nevertheless still getting inspired by him. Those are the elites. The people, though, so that's the people I was saying earlier, the people who learn from all the mistakes of others, they learn from their own mistakes. That is how you become truly elite. It really is a process of proof of work.
Mhm.
The people, though, who keep on running into the same problems over and over again, they keep repeating the same mistakes. They refuse to learn. They'd rather hold on to their tiny little rock of property rather than get the galaxy's worth of property that they could get. And all the joy that comes from that. They'd rather hold on to their own little pride and stuff and have their own little universe of how they want things to be. They'd rather be parasites than providers. Those people, they will just, it's the harsh reality. They will suffer and continue to suffer, and many will suffer literally to death. Some people will rather stay with some kind of fiat currency, and I'm including crypto in that, than go with sound money. Some people would rather live a life of irresponsibility than responsibility, and they would rather die than become responsible. And that is the sad truth. And I would like to say that will eventually go away after several generations, after all the people alive now who are choosing that dark path have grown old and died, starved and died, whatever. But I believe because there will always be a choice, my great-grandchildren will still have that choice to be responsible or not, to be a provider or a parasite. I believe there will always be some people like that. Okay, well, then again, my religious beliefs get involved, and I believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ and him reigning here, in person and stuff. But and I guess that's more aside from the main point. The main point is that option to become a parasite will always be there. That will never ever go away. And maybe, I think it is a little too much to hope for, but maybe there'll be a time where everyone planet wide will choose to be a provider. What a world that would be. But for now, that's just fantasy.
Yeah.
I can't honestly, really, really seriously imagine that. But yeah. But anyway, it all comes down to that. And under a Bitcoin standard, the parasites suffer. They hurt themselves over and over and over again, while the providers just keep on getting better.
Okay, so I got a couple of things. First, I want to make sure, are you good on time, or do we have to be? I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, I
Okay.
am good.
Okay, good, because this is something that I have struggled with for a very, very long time. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, look, Life is not easy. Being a human being who has to show up in this world is not easy. In fact, I would argue that it is it is extremely difficult. Now, when you add on all these extraneous factors like having to decide where you're putting your money, having to decide who you want to be, having to find your purpose and your meaning for life, like this compounds that difficulty. And,
Mhm.
liking it to Bitcoin, it makes it more difficult to participate in the system and have the same economic reward. People, this is the biggest thing wrong with our society. You can boil everything down to this right here. This is my opinion, at least. I could be wrong, but the biggest problem in our world today is that people would rather be comfortable. Okay? That comfort is not always what's best for you. You can choose to struggle now, or you can choose to struggle later. And I would argue that if you choose to struggle later, the difficulty will have increased, the hardness will have increased, and it will become much more painful than it is today. Think about exercise. Literally, you can choose today, and Joe Rogan talks about this all the time. You can choose today to do an hour's workout, take a cold plunge, take that mental stress on and get beat your inner bitch down and say, no, I'm going to do this thing. And you can do that every single day. And what happens is the struggle today turns into ease tomorrow. It becomes easier to move. It becomes easier to live your life and to think clearly and to project your influence in the world. Or you can stay home. You can watch The Real Housewives of Detroit or whatever it is. You can eat Fritos all day long and ice cream and McDonald's. And what's going to happen is you're going to grow fat, you're going to grow slow, you're going to grow lazy, and you're going to become stupid. And what happens then is when
Mhm.
you decide that you want to make the change, it is 150 times more difficult to make that change. And if you never make that change over the course of your lifetime, it becomes more difficult to move. It becomes more difficult to make decisions. It becomes more difficult to live your life. It all
Yep.
comes down to comfort. We're human beings,
Mhm.
and this is why I say that it's not easy, because the mind has a very good way of tricking yourself into thinking, oh, this is what I need. I need to lay on the couch and sleep in that extra hour and not go to the gym. When in reality, and that's comfort, that's I want to be comfortable over discomfort. And this thing that I've been struggling with is, how do I want to show up in the world? Yes, Bitcoin gives me the ability to think about this because I'm not focusing all my energy into trying to make money. Now I'm able to think about, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? And when I am 55, 60 years old, do I want to look like 55-year-olds look today? And I see them, and you see them, everyone sees these people. They're grossly overweight, they're out of shape, they can't breathe, they say one sentence and they're out of breath, and for lack of a better phrase, they're dumb. It's not
Mhm.
saying that they can't get better, but at that point in your life it becomes that much more difficult. And so,
Mhm.
who do I want to be? Do I want to be that person at 55 years old that can barely get up off the couch because I've lived this life of comfort? Or do I want to take the painful steps now and choose to show up for my family and for myself? Do I want to take that now and try to live a better, more comfortable life later? And it's hard, man. Like, anybody who tells you that doing this is easy is full of shit. I mean, taking on the responsibility of where you put your money and how you store your value and where you put your time, like that is difficult. And most people, like you said earlier, most people are not going to do that. They don't want to think about where they're going to put their money. They don't want that responsibility. They want to obfuscate it to somebody else. But the problem with obfuscating it to someone else is that now that person is in control and you are not the arbiter of your own destiny. And the main point of all of this is that if you want to live a happy, productive, and comfortable life later on, then you need to focus in and do the difficult thing, the hard thing today.
Yeah, I could not agree more. What you're describing is kind of like a natural version of debt. That like you can get debt now that has an interest rate, 5%, 10%, doesn't matter, just some kind of interest rate. You could pay back now and pay back a whole lot less, or you could defer it and keep putting it off, and then pay a whole lot more later. It's like that, but like nature's version of it. That, so I was thinking about that, and then also you made me think of the four turnings. Good times creating weak men, and weak men creating hard times, and then hard times creating strong men. But I think you hit the nail on the head about why is the fourth turning always the one of the biggest upheaval, the biggest change. That's that's the one we're going through right now, where hard times are creating strong men and women too. Um, it's because the whole comfort thing. Everyone in all ages, we are all affected by comfort and discomfort, by pleasure and pain, by things we want to do and things we don't want to do. When we go through the fourth turning, though, things get so bad that it starts to inspire men and women to become strong, to say, enough of this. I'm getting off the couch. I'm throwing away the last of my seed oil filled chips and stuff. I'm turning off the soap operas, and I'm going to get up and build something. I'm going to get up and fix something because I am sick and tired of this. This is one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of the Disney movie WALL-E. I get the point that they're trying to make, but when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, come on!" Would people, like, after it's like been like 7 generations or something? It's like, really? I don't know, but I think that's missing the point of the movie, the kind of the warning of it. But still, I'm just being a little stickler about it. But what was I saying there? Oh yeah. And so that's when these big changes happen. But moving from that hard times, creating strong men, is the most difficult. It is the most painful. And so with it, every single time there is a big revolution, a big war, a big, depression. There's something that happens, that is a hinge point of history. And we are actually, I believe, at a bigger hinge point than we've been at for thousands of years. And not just because of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin and the internet and a whole bunch of different things are all playing a part in this hinge point in history, which makes me really nervous or even just outright scared about the near term, like next decade or two, but makes me so unbelievably, indescribably bullish about the distant term, the 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. That's just going to be magical. I just wish and hope that we develop some kind of technology where I don't want to live forever, but I mean, I want to extend my life just so I can see it, just so I can see what we're building become something. But then again, maybe that's the high time preference part of me. Thinking about the people who helped build the foundations of the cathedrals we have now. They never got to see the finished product, and yet they still worked. So that's probably something I need to let go of and just be like, no, that's for my great grandchildren to see. They get to see, the last Satoshi get mined in roughly 2140. Man, if I had a time machine just so I could be there for that party when that block comes in, just something like that, that'd be awesome. Not just because of that sentimental moment, but also just what will the world be like then in 2140? Oh man. And maybe I'll be looking down from heaven at that time, and I'll get to see it that way. But yeah. So anyway, just unbelievably bullish about the future for that reason. But so just going back to the main point there, this is why it's such a big deal when we move from this fourth phase in and start the whole cycle over again with these strong men and women. First the weak people, because of the hard times, those weak people becoming strong, and then building the good times.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna try to lay this out, because I wanna get into like the education aspect and the orange pilling aspect of Bitcoin and where we're going. So I'm gonna try to lay this out based on what you just said. Strong men create good times create weak men create bad times. That's the four turnings. Right now we see an extreme amount of weak men creating hard times. That is the Fiat mentality. We have leaders, we have people in high positions of power who are weak men, who are not willing to do the things that are necessary to build a stronger society. So therefore we are dealing with extremely difficult times throughout the world. We in the United States, we are privileged. If you've read Check Your Financial Privilege, you can kind of like dive into some of the experiences of other people around the world who are dealing with much more difficult times. Now, this whole conversation has led up to the point of, if people want to show up in the world, but the money is being destroyed, debased, inflated away, stolen through them, their money, it will basically just relate it to value, to time, to energy spent. If they're unable to store that, then those weak men, or those people living in dark times, hard times, who want to be strong men, it's 100,000 times more difficult to be a strong man and show up in the world with those values. So, white pill moment. How do we show up in this world as strong men and women, individuals of virtue, as Svetsky would say, who can then build better times? Well, obviously we need to educate people about Bitcoin. So my question to you is, how do we go about living our daily lives and teaching people about Bitcoin and all of the things that we've spoken about here today in a way that they understand how and that relates to them being better individuals who show up in a more holistic way?
I'm kind of divided about this. On one hand, I want to just tell people about Bitcoin, and I want to meet people where they're at. That's important, because if you tell them all this stuff about responsibility go up, as Svetsky says, or all these other things, these tales from the bottom of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. There is no bottom, but still, they're from deep inside the Bitcoin rabbit hole. They won't get it, and they'll think that just there's some weird cultist thing that just I don't want to deal with any of that. But if you meet them where they're at, then and oftentimes it's just number go up, something that is such the tippy top of the iceberg. But then they can go on their journey and learn the same things that that you yourself have. Now, that's not to say that you should just tell them about Bitcoin and leave them. Don't talk to them anymore and let them figure things out on their own. No, still talk with them and help them see things better. That's actually one reason why podcasts like this exist, and many others. Lots of podcasts and books that people can read, watch, listen to, whatever. And they can learn all these kinds of things, so they don't have to make mistakes to learn them. And they can start receiving some of these things as they're ready for it. And yeah, just like with the Bushido of Bitcoin, there's going to be some things they're going to read or hear that they won't jive with. They'll be, I don't think so yet. But as they think about it more and dive more down that rabbit hole and really hash it out, then they'll see the wisdom of those things they used to disagree with. I've been there so many times. It's those people who are humble enough. I know I just called myself humble, as ironic, but the people who can change their minds, who can be students of the universe, or just let life and reality teach them. Those are the people who, like I was saying earlier, who become the providers. Those are the people who grow and become better and stronger. So let's see. Taking back to your main question earlier about you may need to remind me actually about that, some of the details of your question about like how do we orange pill people with this? And,
How do we
yeah.
show up in the world to become stronger human beings? How do we
Mhm.
obviously we need better money to do that. So how do we teach people about Bitcoin in a way that they understand that this is the solution to becoming stronger human beings?
Yeah. Um, I think the first step to that is really just showing people, hey, here is a battery, like the Sailors does this, and other people, that like you can store your time, your energy, your labor. You can store it in this where it won't be taken from you. When you have a slice of Bitcoin, let's say you got a full Bitcoin, you have 1/21 millionth of the whole supply. A little bit more than that actually, if you consider all the Bitcoin that's been lost. But that slice, the size of that slice will never diminish compared to all the rest of it. It'll just get, I guess, more filled with yummy goodness inside the pie. Side note, an analogy I've used with my kids. I told this to my daughter many years ago because they've all grown up hearing about Bitcoin, not their entire lives. But as the daughter I'm referring to is 10 years old, and I discovered Bitcoin when she was 1. But but she was like 5 or something, and I was telling her this, and she was wondering, "Why do you talk about Bitcoin so much, Daddy? Like, why is this such a big deal?" And she really likes, but well, certainly down at 5 years old, her favorite food was bananas, like not apples or oranges. She just loved having fresh bananas. She'd have, one every day, every morning with her breakfast. She just loved having a banana. So I came up with an analogy. I said, imagine if there's this magical kind of banana that I pointed out, look at the bananas. They're getting older, they're getting more spotty and stuff. I mean, they're getting ripe, sure, but you leave them for long enough, they get brown all over, and they're still okay to eat. Then you leave them longer, they start getting moldy, they start rotting. So I said, imagine there's a magical kind of banana that did the opposite, that got not greener. I mean, like it gets brighter yellow, it gets more tasty with time. Um, and it never stops. There's never a point in which it plateaus in how good it looks and how good it tastes. It just gets better and better all the time. In fact, exponentially. Then you have regular bananas that get worse and worse, like what we're used to. So I asked her a few questions. Then I said, okay, given that, how many of these? We start calling them super bananas. How many of these super bananas would you want? And she's like, oh, as many as I can get. And I said, okay, great. Second question. When would you ever eat them? Akin to spending your Bitcoin for something. And she's like, well, at first she's like, well, I wouldn't want, well, and she thought about it for a little bit and said, I guess only when I really, really need it. If there's something like if I'm hungry, don't have any other food, yeah, then I'll use like, very good. Yeah, spend your Bitcoin. Everyone watching this, definitely spend your Bitcoin, but not willy-nilly. It's not fiat. Spend it on stuff that you need. Also, side note about that. I know this is a side note on a side note, but I like to think of all fiat money as unrealized Bitcoin. It is just has its value that just has not been turned into Bitcoin yet. So I spend well by extension. Therefore, I spend Bitcoin all the time when we buy our groceries, when we pay our bills and stuff like that. That allows me, my wife, and my kids to have a house. That's I tell people all the time. This house that I live in right now, that we own, we have a mortgage and stuff like that. But um, given like that versus the other possibility of what if I just decided to stack sats and we just stayed in our little mobile home that we were living in before we bought this house, and just paying rent. Sure, I'd have more sats today, and 5, now 6, maybe actually still 5. Very, very unhappy children and a very, very unhappy wife and a very, very unhappy me. Is that worth it? No, not at all. There are some things that are absolutely worth every sat, and it doesn't matter what price Bitcoin goes to. It'd be $1 billion tomorrow, and I would still not regret buying this house or buying the food that we bought when we last went shopping. We need to eat. So anyway, just side note there, all about that. That was a side note, just that there's some things you do need to buy, and there always will be. So she was saying that, yeah, so I'll eat them when I need to. I said, great. Question number 3. How many regular spotty bananas that will continue to get old and moldy eventually can I give you in exchange for just one super banana? And she was like, what? Hang on. I was like, none. I would never give you infinite. I would never give you any of them. I said, very good. You understand Bitcoin now. And the light that went off in her eyes, she's like, oh, that's why you talk about it all the time. Like, yes, yes, sweetie, that's why. It's like, because it is this money where you can store, taking back to the original topic now, you can store your time, your hard work in this battery that will only get sweeter, only get more beautiful, only get more delicious, only more valuable with time. And oh yeah. And so if we start off by telling people that look, like, what is their time worth? What their time away from their family, their time away from doing the things that they would really want to do. Well, if they're going to be paid in spotty and soon to be moldy bananas, or they can get paid in super bananas, if they can be paid in this way that that only gets better with time. If they understood it that way, I think they would all, everyone, just like my event at that time, 5-year-old daughter, would, yeah, I think everyone would want the money that doesn't get debased, that only grows in value with time. And yeah, go ahead.
I love that, man. Like spotty bananas versus super bananas. I'm gonna steal that from you because
Go for it.
I think that was an excellent way to explain to anyone why Bitcoin is so vitally important. One thing, so all of what you just said hit really close to home for me. And I think that the education aspect is very important. We need to educate people. We need to meet people where they are at in order to help them understand why Bitcoin helps them show up as better human beings. I'm going to push all of that to the side because I found something else I want to talk about. And so you're familiar with Shinobi. Most of the audience is probably familiar with Shinobi. He writes a lot of articles on Bitcoin Magazine. He's much like Svetsky. He's very controversial. He says things the way that he feels, and he's not afraid to get the backlash from the community. Now, he wrote a take on Bitcoin Magazine not too long ago that I very much agree with. Look, so first off, he wrote the take. It is that Bitcoin is a use it or lose it scenario. Either you use it or you don't get to use it after time. And I'm not going to go into what he wrote. Go look at Bitcoin Magazine. It was a great opinion take, and it takes like 3 minutes to read. But the whole point of what I'm trying to get at is you cannot eat your Bitcoin. You cannot use your Bitcoin, or you cannot use Bitcoin for Bitcoin's sake. If you want to appreciate Bitcoin for the value that it holds, you have to spend it. You have to use it for something. Now, just like you, Jason, I do not advise anyone who holds Bitcoin to go out and spend it on frivolous things that don't bring value to their life. Okay. That Lamborghini is not going to make you happy. The Rolex is not going to make you happy. A home and a piece of property that you can raise your family in, that is going to bring you joy. Okay. Building a business that you show up in the world and you build your purpose, that will bring you joy. Okay. Putting food in your children's mouths, there's an argument to be said there that brings you joy. Okay.
I'd like to see the argument against that.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
my whole point is that while Bitcoin is ultimate, fundamental, like immaculate conception of money, you have to spend it. You have to spend it. You have to use it. But there's a good way to spend it, and there is a bad way to spend it. You can spend it in a way that brings more value to you than the Bitcoin just being held up in cold storage. There is a lot to be said when people come into Bitcoin about the HODL mentality. I wholeheartedly agree with HODL. hold on for dear life because the value is going to increase. But when that value hits a certain point and you can do certain things with it, do those things. Like, do it, like I had a conversation with the creator of Seed Signer. And he told me a story about how back in the early days of the 2020s, back when Bitcoin was starting to gain a little bit of traction, it had hit like $200, and he had a lot because he had learned about Bitcoin. He had bought a bunch and he was holding it, and he held it for a couple years, and all of a sudden he had an immense amount of value. What did he do? Well, he quit his Fiat job and he bought a house. And then he tells me that to this day, he thinks about all of the Bitcoin that he could have had if he had just set that dream aside and held on for longer. And I argued that what he did brought more value to his life than holding the Bitcoin ever would have brought. And he said, "You're right. It did, because it gave me the ability to spend more time with my family, time that I will never get back, time that will be gone forever. I was able to spend with my daughter and live this life where I was home all the time and we weren't, trying to fight for survival in a home that we own." And I will say that right there is worth more. At going back to the very beginning of this podcast, when you said that your kids are not worth 22 million Bitcoin, they're not worth $1 million Bitcoin. They're worth so much more. That value, the home and the non-fiat lifestyle and the spending time with your family brings, is worth more than 1 billion Bitcoin. I don't care how much value my Bitcoin accrues. As soon as I have the ability to quit my Fiat job, as soon as I have the ability to buy a piece of property and land, I'm going to do it. 100%. I'm going to cash that shit in and I am going to live a better life. And if you disagree with me, I would like to hear your argument as to why, because you can't eat your Bitcoin.
Yeah. Amen. Couple things about that. What I noticed, and I just now thought of this, is that therefore what Bitcoin incentivizes people to do, or what it leads people to learn, is to focus on the things that bring them that greatest joy. Then now flip that around to the receivers of that Bitcoin, the providers of those things that bring great joy. We're probably going to see over the next several decades a total shift, a total flip, where the fancy cars that don't bring any joy and that are so super expensive and stuff like that, and sure, they look nice and are fast and stuff like that, they may get demonetized. They may get less, have a smaller part to play in the overall economics of the world, because more people will be going after the things that bring joy. Whereas the providers of those joy-filled things will be earning more. They'll be getting more of that Bitcoin. So so that could just lead to a world where now it's like compounding incentives of the kind of things that bring joy. The second thing I want to say, and this is actually a personal story that I've never told to anyone except my wife and maybe some of my older kids. And I thought, should I share this? A moment ago, I was thinking this. I'm like, yeah, I think I should. Like I said, very personal story, and I ask anyone who does not believe in God listening to this to just bear with me. Because shortly after I got into Bitcoin, so this would be late 2015, early 2016, somewhere roughly around there. Got into Bitcoin in summer of 2015, and and I remember seeing the rise and falls. Oh no, it went up by $5 and I didn't buy earlier. Oh no, it went down by $10. It didn't sell earlier and stuff. I was like, $5 whole dollars, $10 whole dollars. Wow. Actually, sorry. Side note, I remember shortly after I bought, Bitcoin went from like $250 to like $230, something like that. And I was petrified my wife was going to kill me by that. I did mention it to her later, and she's like, "Okay, and?" Like that. I'm like, "Okay, good." And sorry. On that note, fast forward a few years to March of 2020. by this point, so my wife was never like a Bitcoin maxi, never like really excited about Bitcoin, geeking out about it like I do. And she likes it. It all makes sense to her. She understands the basics of it, and she does like to say she's a hodler. That she had a hodl mentality even before we discovered Bitcoin, but but she hadn't really like exuded a lot of like enthusiasm about it. Well, March of 2020 happens. There's this big market crash where we went down from like the 9,000s down to like the 4,000s or something like that. It's crazy. And I got home from work that day at FedEx and told her, I was like, so this drop happened in Bitcoin. And she's like, really? How big of a drop? And I showed her on the chart and kind of braced for impact about how she's going to react. And she said, so what you're telling me is we can afford to buy more now. I was like, I love you so much. I knew I had married the right person. And yeah, that's a side note to all this. Anyway, though, the personal story, that was not the personal story that I wanted to share. The personal story was so late 2015, early 2016, somewhere around there. I was seeing the price going up and down. And I was like, it would be really awesome if I could get like some divine intervention here or something. If I could like pray and God's like, hey, psst, sell your Bitcoin now. Okay, psst, now buy some Bitcoin now. Something like that. It's like, I kind of find the cheat code of the universe, God's so much better than that. I did pray for about that. I was like, yeah, because to help my family out. By the way, I could barely afford this when I was working several jobs and stuff. This before FedEx, and barely affording to put money on the table. So I was buying like $5 of Bitcoin at a time. It was sad. I know now people can try to mathematically figure out how much Bitcoin I was buying at the time, but I don't have that Bitcoin anymore. Anyway, that's another matter. Sorry, IRS. Who's watching this? Anyway, the answer I got, what I felt in my heart, it was basically God just basically said, ignore that. Don't worry about that, about when you buy and when you sell. Do you have the money to buy more? Then buy more. Do you need to sell it because you need to buy something that's important? Okay, then sell it. Ignore the price. Buy if you can. Sell if you need. It was so ridiculously simple. And in my experience, the greatest wisdom is always really simple. But I just felt that wisdom just touched me in my heart. And it was the beginning. I didn't immediately just let go of the price, forget about it. No, that was the beginning of my journey of ignoring the price. And but that was before DCA was a thing. I didn't even know what dollar cost averaging was. And before the phrases like stay humble, stack sats started becoming a thing. And but I just got that basic idea, the basic wisdom. So then later on, when I did hear people talk about DCAing and just stack stats and stuff, it all clicked. It all made sense to me. I was primed and ready for that. Mm-hmm. And so but yeah, I just want to share that wisdom with everybody else. It's not my wisdom. I don't take any responsibility for it, or not responsibility. I don't take any credit for it. Yeah, just if you can afford it, you're not planning on using that money for anything else for next 5 years or longer, go ahead and store it in Bitcoin. What are you doing? Like, what else are you going to do with it? That'd be better. Just go ahead and do that. But if you have something better to use it for, like food that you need right now, buying a house, or even sometimes there are some things that may seem frivolous. Let's say like going to see a movie at a movie theater, which, oh, good grief. It's been years and years since I last did. But that can be quality time with your spouse, with a boyfriend, girlfriend, with your child. That can be counted as quality time too. That becomes something memorable for your children. And so 10 years later, your child is like, oh, remember when we went to go see that movie? That was such a great experience, Dad. And worth every sat again. So this is actually a question I bring up with my kids sometimes. My now almost 13, I turned 13 in a couple days actually. Almost 13-year-old son. Several years ago, he wanted to buy a bike. And I was like, hey, I'm willing to go halvesies with you. Like, you've saved up a lot of money, you've been doing a lot of work, and that's great. I'm not going to require you to buy your bike entirely outright. He was like 11 at the time, I don't know. But I said, hey, I'll go half and half. But here's the thing. That will cost you X amount of sats. I actually told him how many. What if tomorrow Bitcoin explodes? What if tomorrow the U.S. government is still like, Biden's in charge of stuff, but still, like, what if they say, hey, we're going to become the new El Salvador, and we're going to adopt a Bitcoin standard here and stuff, and it just explodes into hundreds of thousands, like multiple hundreds of thousands overnight. Pretend that that's going to happen. Will you regret buying that bicycle? His answer was no hesitation. Yes, I will absolutely regret buying that bicycle. I said, okay, there's your answer. You want the sats more than the bike. Don't get the bike. But if the answer is no, I'll have no regrets. I'll have the bicycle. Or in my case, I'll have this house. Like, no, I don't care what happens with Bitcoin's price. That's your answer. Buy the house or the bike. In that case, go to the movies. Buy that fancy car if that's the case. If you think the fancy car is going to matter to you more than what Bitcoin's price could do in the future, either you're going to be right and happy, or you're going to be wrong and hopefully learn, and have that regret later. And the regret can be that kind of fire underneath you to get you up and move in a better direction, and help you learn. But yeah, so that's a question to ask yourself. That I believe that term is called opportunity cost. Just looking at that and saying, yeah, will I regret this in the future? Or like if Bitcoin does this or that, because we don't know the future. None of us know what Bitcoin's going to do. So just kind of put in that perspective. That's helped my kids out a lot to save. They're all Bitcoin hodlers, and even the 1-year-old. Who, by the way, not sure if I mentioned this earlier in the stream, but maybe I did at the very beginning. I forget. But my 6th child turns 1 today. As January 2nd, and yeah, thanks. If you had waited one more day to be born, he would have been born Bitcoin's birthday. Oh well. And what was I gonna say about that? Oh yeah, but yeah, even he has Bitcoin. But yeah, and so that I'm using Bitcoin as a teaching tool for my own kids. Sometimes with analogies like bananas, to help them live a better life, to be more responsible, to make more responsible choices that will help them be happier in the future, rather than having to deal with more pain and discomfort later in the future.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people wish they would have had taught to them when they were young and learning that money story. I definitely would have benefited. But you can't change your past, but you sure as shit can change your future, with how you
Absolutely.
show up in the world and stuff. First off, I have something I want to say, but first off, shout out to the wives, man. Like, I had this experience with my wife not too long ago. We hit $108,000 not too long ago, and then we subsequently saw a 15% drop to $92,000. Now I told my wife, I said, babe, I was like, yeah, Bitcoin was at 108,000, because I was all excited about it. I was telling her about it, and I was like, yeah, Bitcoin's at 92,000. And her immediate response was, did we buy more Bitcoin? And I wanted to pick her up and hold her and shout at the moon and just tell her how much I loved her, because I was like, you might not be a Bitcoiner, but you understand, like, you get it. And I'm in the same boat with you, man. Like, my wife doesn't care. My wife is like, as long as I got a roof over my head, I got food in my stomach, my son's growing up happy and healthy and kind, like, I don't care. But that moment was a very like good moment in my life, because I was like, I've done my work. Like, so shout out to all the wives out there, all the partners out there that aren't really Bitcoiners, but totally get it. You are supporting us, and it gives us that drive and that ambition to keep pushing forward. Go back
Absolutely. Yeah.
to this time preference thing. This not time preference, opportunity cost. Okay, you could have paid attention to the price, and you could have continued stacking, and you could have been angry at your life, upset, sad with what you had, or you could just completely ignore the price and you buy the thing that you need at this moment in time to live a better, more quality, more holistic life. And I would argue that you are a better person today because of that choice and that decision. And that has implications for the way that you're able to show up for your children, the way that you're able to provide these analogies and these teaching lessons to your children, which then allow them to grow up in a world where they have a better understanding. They have, I like to call them tools in the tool belt. If my grandmother who was able to store money in her glove box and buy a house and all this good stuff, if she had had better tools in her toolbox that she could have given me at a young age, I would have been better primed to accept and understand this way sooner. I wasn't, so I had to go out into the world and find those tools myself. Your children, your sons and your daughter, are better prepared today than you were ever when you were their age. And they will
Yeah.
live much better, much more holistic lives because of it.
Yeah, or at least they'll have that opportunity.
Yeah.
They still have the opportunity to turn parasitic if they wish. I don't anticipate that for any of them, but that choice is always before all of us. But yeah, just with time and experience, usually and hopefully, we we see the joy that comes from choosing the better path, and so then we start to consistently choose that path over and over again.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, this is everything that I had hoped it would be. This conversation was a much needed conversation for myself. I hope the audience enjoyed it. I really do. If they don't, you guys, will be back to our regular scheduled programming next week with, a podcast about Bitcoin mining. But I had fun. I appreciate you. And, honestly, like, I would like to do this more often, to just have more of these philosophical conversations to help people understand how we go about and live our lives and how that affects the lives of others around us.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on here. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love thinking about this kind of stuff. This what I think about all the time. Um, and I can't wait to be a miner again. As I said, I was before again back a couple years ago through Heatbit, but then the miner broke. It was turning on, but it wasn't hashing at all.
Mhm.
I had to turn it back, like return it back, and then I've been waiting for a good year and a half now for my replacement. Um, and so I'm but in return I'm getting two miners. For I gave them one and they're sending me two, so that's nice. But yeah, so can't wait to mine again and do that proof of work while getting some of the heat. So I usually work in my garage, and this time of year my garage gets very, very cold.
Oh,
So
yeah.
having a space heater in there or two, that's also mining Bitcoin, is really, really good. Really, yeah. So just using that residual heat to good use, so I can be more comfortable down there in my garage during the winter.
Hell yeah. That's what I love to hear, man. I'm a hash rate heat punk myself, and I believe that heat is a product and not a problem. So I love to hear it, man. Like, there's something out there for everyone. So it's
Mhm.
always fun. And maybe we'll get you on to talk about your experience. We can tell this whole experience of buying the first heat bit and then it breaking, and we can dive into that. But I have one more thing, and this whole conversation has been a very esoteric way of asking this question. And so maybe we can put it into a few less words and a little bit more of a concise version. But Jason, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Bitcoin to me, let's see. I think here there's a lot of things it means to me. Um, it well, it is a record of truth, and so Bitcoin to me is truth. Um, it's an unbreakable, like I said earlier, an unbreakable way of communicating value. Um, it it's a bridge to a better life. Let's say that. Um, we can walk across that bridge either direction. We can walk across it and then come back to a worse life if we wish. It doesn't catapult you to the other side of this chasm to a better life or something. No, no. But it does connect you to it, gives you that opportunity to have a better life financially, and morally, if you want to call it that, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. But but it's just an opportunity. It's okay. It is the what America a long time ago was called the land of opportunity. um, Bitcoin is that now for the 21st century. There is no physical land, no additional land we can move to physically, but it is. I feel like I'm gonna be like Michael Saylor when I say this. It is the land of opportunity in cyberspace, and uh, Yeah, and so that's why like people say Bitcoin is freedom and stuff. I'm like, Bitcoin brings freedom or can bring freedom if it's used right. And that is entirely on us. That's entirely up to us. We can use this new land of opportunity for good or ill. But if you use it for ill, reality is going to smack you in the face pretty bad, or pretty harshly later, and not much longer later. Those consequences are much nearer and a lot harder to escape. And Bitcoin is the foundation for a better world, a better future. Again, as a Christian, I firmly believe that we'll have a whole second coming of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. And again, if your viewers don't believe in that, that's totally fine. But I believe it is that foundation. Like every kingdom, like real, like actual kingdom, like political kingdoms, need a foundation of money, of economics, to bind the society together. And Bitcoin is that, but for this future world that we don't quite have yet, where one that is ready for this godly return for the return of Jesus Christ and stuff. And hey, what if I don't believe this for a second, but what if Christians are off base? What if we're not right? Well, still, it's a foundation for a better world in the future. The specifics of the better world, maybe the Christian future, right, that talks about in the Bible, maybe not. In either case, better. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, 100%. That was a long way of saying that Bitcoin allows us to live our lives in the way that we choose. Really it does. Jason,
And we said
is,
we'd try to be shorter and be more concise. I totally failed at that.
it's all good, man. It's fine. I think that the point came across in the best way possible. So I also want to say that this has been my longest episode, and I have had a lot of fun. So we are at the 2 hour and 1 minute mark. So this is the longest episode of the Build a Mind podcast ever. So we're breaking barriers over here. All good things. I want to give you a chance to tell the audience where they can find you. But first, I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you for the work that you've put in. It obviously shows in your understanding, the depth of knowledge that you have about Bitcoin, and for your work at Satlantis. What they're doing over there, what you and Svetsky and the team are putting together, is very, very cool. It's very interesting, and it's built on Nostr, which is the freedom social layer. So just thank you for everything that you're doing and all the work that you're putting in. Tell the audience where they can find you and how they could get a hold of you if they want to have one of their own deep dive philosophical conversations.
You can find me on Twitter, Nostr, even Telegram. Just search Geeky Guy. So we talked about Ikigai earlier. Just mix the word geek with it. So GEEKIGAI. Because I geek out about this thing. That's also my Ikigai, being Bitcoin. But so Geeky Guy on Twitter, and like I said, Telegram. My DMs are open in all those places. And Nostr, you can find me Geeky Guy, but also on Twitter and Nostr, I go by Jason Hodlers, with last name Sellars in the Bitcoin space. It's not a good mix. So I'd go with Jason Hodlers.
Awesome.
But so you can find me there in any of those places.
Cool. Well,
go ahead. Then you can also you're good. Then you can also follow Satlantis on Twitter. Join Satlantis, so at Join Satlantis, and Nostr, just search Satlantis. I am one of the people in charge of that account. So please follow Satlantis, and and check out all the posts, all the notes and tweets that we post through that. Which will of course be about things about Bitcoin, but also about nomading and being a sovereign individual and things like that.
Yeah, definitely check it out, guys. What they're building over at Satlantis is an incredible new piece of technology that will connect Bitcoiners around the world and make it easier to travel to different places and feel right at home when you're in these different communities. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with Nostr, it kind of brings the Noster vibe of all of the way that that's connected, but also to like Google Maps. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah. So with that, guys, this has been the Build a Mind podcast. I think how many episodes are we in? I think this is episode 53. So we're starting off the new year, 53 episodes strong. It's been really fun. I'm really enjoying myself, and I have a lot of really big plans for 2025. So if you guys like this episode, I just ask that you like it, share it, subscribe to it, leave a comment, let me know what you think about it, and we will see you on the next Build a Mind podcast. The next one will be a mining podcast, I promise, guys. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.